Hello, hello. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the new Abyss that just came out. I wanted to give a few tips, tricks, and help with the team building because this Abyss is actually quite restrictive, and I feel like some guidance might be needed if you are struggling to clear it. But if you're not, I don't feel like this Abyss is particularly hard, it's just very limiting. When it comes down to the team, the biggest problem you will have is the second half and the enemies that you have there. The problem is that you have an Drake that requires you to have a bow character, and on the next chamber you will have a Hydra Tulpa that, well, is immune to Hydra damage, and not all elements of it can be swirled easily. So these two things can complicate things for you, but there is a way to work around it. I feel like there are two characters that stand out the most when it comes down to being useful in both of these chambers, and these characters are Special and Lyney. Both of these characters are bow characters, but they're good for different reasons. Lyney is a good carry who can do a lot of damage and is good against the Tulpa, and Special is just a very versatile support that can just be put in a lot of teams and you will be able to clear it with her. When it comes down to the other characters, there are other characters who can bring down the boss and who are actually pretty good at what they do, but there is a high possibility that your investment is not going to be high enough for those characters to be really working. For example, someone like Goro or someone like Kujo-Sara, they're both good, but you will probably need to have Ito and Raiden on the highest investment as well. Someone like Yelan is good on the Drake, but then she becomes almost useless on the Tulpa boss fight. Now, if your other part of the team is strong enough, maybe you don't need Yelan on the Tulpa, and you can just use her. But again, the official is just going to be the general character who is you put her and you have easier time clearing. There isn't much to say about the Drake other than that. There are actually characters who can put the Drake down, even when they're not the bow characters. For example, Kinage Grapple can actually hit it when it uses one of its attack, or Furina can randomly put it down. The problem here is that these are not very reliable, so I don't recommend these types of methods, but if you're feeling spicy or that's the best option you can use, well, you can try that as well. Now when it comes down to 12-3, the biggest problem is going to be obviously Hydra Tulpa. And the problem is that, well, it takes no Hydra damage, so your Hydra supports are pretty useless, and using something like Verdescent Venom is almost impossible for some of the elements. However, it's not entirely impossible. For example, if the Tulpa has the Electro on it, you can actually swirl Electro. That's why Fischl is actually pretty good here, because you can get an Electro swirl. Now you can't really get a Dendro aura, so you can't constantly aggravate, but you can get a pure increase to the electro damage, which is still something. When it comes down to Pyro Swirl, it is actually possible to get a Pyro Swirl and decrease Pyro resistance for the Tulpa, but the ways you do it are usually quite complicated, and the team limitations of the Drake usually won't really allow you to have it. And the two ways that you can deal well with Hydro Tulpa resistance is Chevreuse and Xilonen. Both of these characters don't need basically any condition to shred the resistance, so just using Shalon's E will allow you to get your defensive shred. Now you won't really be able to get the passive effect from the Cinder set he said, but it is still a resistance shred, so you still will get quite a lot of damage out of it. Using Chevreuse teams also will be quite useful, because just decreases all the resistances of the enemy, and so you don't really need to do anything other than, well, bring Chevreuse team. And another advantage of Lyney and Fischl is that Lyney can really use Xilonen, because, well, you can do double Geo, or you can just use Xilonen as a solo Geo character and still get damage resistance shred. And for the Chevreuse, well, a lot of the time Chevreuse teams actually run Fischl in them, so you will have a reliable way to put down the Drake. You probably noticed that I didn't talk much about the first half of the Abyss, and well, that's because across all the chambers, it's very similar. It's just have a good single target damage. Now, there are some things that I want to point out, and that is having some sort of AoE can be pretty useful here. You don't need a big AoE. Someone like Grizzly, Arlecchino, or Hu Tao's charge attack will be enough to hit both Avatar of Lavas, but it's still something that you should probably have and not just purely single target damage. Another thing that I want to point out is the only enemy that you're probably going to struggle with, and that is Fluid Avatar of Lava in 12.3. The problem is that this enemy has very high pyro resistance, but on top it also has a pyro aura on them. What that makes is that using someone like Hu Tao or Arlecchino isn't particularly effective. However, on top of that, something like Aggravate can suffer quite a lot because you will start to trigger Overload and then you don't have Dandruff. It's a little bit of a trouble to make the best use of it, but the best way to really solve this issue is by having any Hydro character in the team, because then the Hydro character will vape, their damage is going to be higher, and, well, you're going to kill these avatars in no time. I recommend having some Hydro character because it will make you have a little more time against Hydro Tulpa. However, when it comes down to the second half, if you have a Lyney, I would highly recommend using him in this Abyss. The probably one of the best teams you can do is something like Lyney, Bennett, Xilonen, Zhongli. However, if you don't have these characters, it's still all good. You can just use Lyney, Xiangling, Sucrose, and Bennett, and this team actually has one big advantage, and that advantage is that you can actually do a global swirl with this team. Now, if you don't know what global swirl is, I did an old video about it, so you can check that out. But basically, it's a way for you to decrease pyro resistance on the enemies that are immune to pyro. It does have an actual use specifically in this case. And as for the official teams, I recommend using any Aggravate team. Realistically, Kutchin, Yae, Beidou, whatever you want really will work. However, I want to point out that using Nahida is quite beneficial in this Aggravate teams, because if you use Nahida, it allows you to proc more blooms, which makes you proc more hyper blooms. For that matter, I feel like one of the best characters you can use with Fischl is Cloran, because she has self-healing, unlike other electric carries. So having Cloran allows you to use Nahida Fischl and then have any Anemo character you want. For that reason, I feel like Cloran is the best, but it doesn't matter that much, and you can get away with any character you like, really. As for the tips, there isn't really much I can say, because most of the enemies are very straightforward in their behavior. In this Abyss, there isn't much you need to group or worry about. So the only tip I can give you is that Tulpa uses the exact same sequence of attack every time. If you are dying to the same attack over and over again, you can just kind of predict what attack it's going to be if it's in like first 30 seconds, because in the first 30 seconds the Tulpa does basically exact the same thing. So you can change your rotation a little bit, maybe do something slower or faster in order to kind of memorize and not get hit. For example, when you know that there's going to be an attack, you can just use the ult there. And because it's going to be the same, even if you die, well, it's fine, because you do the same thing next try and you will again dodge the attack. So that's like a small thing you can use. That's kind of it for the theory part of this video. The rest of this video is just me clearing some problematic chambers with different teams. But before that starts, I want to remind you to please like, subscribe, do all that stuff, because it really does help me. And with that out of the way, enjoy the rest of this video.